chef. This is what you've been cooking for years, and it works. And either you cook the menu that our customers have come to...
Want me to cook the same food?
The same exact...
The same food that he ripped apart? The same guy who's coming tonight?
The restaurant isn't filled with critics. It's filled with people that have been eating your food for the last 10 years. So now suddenly you're going to be an artist. Well, be an artist on your own time.
Coming up, we've been creative in our own time to bring you a film and food review of the 2014 film, Chef. Welcome everyone to the Film and Food Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Roberts, and thank you again for joining us for episode 6. We've loved having you on the journey, and if this is the first time that you've listened to the Film and Food Podcast, well, we're a brand new podcast and we talk about our favourite film and food movies. We talk and celebrate everything culinary and cinematic in film. We rate a film based on its film and food moments, and we give you film-inspired recipes to try at home. So make sure you subscribe to this podcast wherever you listen and go back and listen to our other episodes. Our first episode was a film and food review of Ratatouille. Our second episode was on my top 10 films of 2019. Our third episode was on Julie and Julia, a film and food review. Episode 4 was on the 100-Foot Journey, a film and food review. And our last episode was a new format, our Quick Bites episode on everything that I've been watching in the past month or so. So make sure you go check all of those out, and now let's talk about this week's episode. I'm so excited to share this episode with you this week with a brand new guest that I'll reveal to you later. This week's episode is what we call a film and food review, and let me quickly explain what that means. We review a film for both its culinary and cinematic quality, and we do this in 3 segments. First, we look at the menu, giving an intro and some initial thoughts. Then it's time to dine. We dive into the meat of the film, if you will, giving our thoughts on the highlights from the movie, our favourite film moments, our favourite food moments, before finally giving our compliments to the chef. This is where we give our concluding thoughts and ratings. But wait, there's more. Every film and food review, we give you a recipe inspired by that film to try at home, and each recipe has been tested and tried by me. And this week, you not only get 1 recipe to try at home, not 2, but 4 recipes from this film that you can try at home. So this is a really special episode, and I can't wait for you to listen to it. Now, every film and food review, I have a special guest, and I'm really stoked to have a brand new guest on the show. So without further ado, let me introduce him. Well, today we have a brand new guest on the Film and Food Podcast. He is a food writer, former food writer. Former food writer.
I'll take it though.
Food lover, film lover, Jonathon Ford.
Thank you. Good to be here. Thanks, Chris.
No worries. So we just ate like 4 different things from the movie Chef.
Yep. I've eaten basically half a day's worth of food.
Yeah,
it's been quite a meal.
Yep. So we'll tell you about those recipes later. But you get your money's worth. I feel like last episode I made 3 recipes for 1 episode. Usually it is 1, and I think I will have to contain myself at some point for the sake of my time and budget, but
and the kitchen clean afterwards.
Yeah, Jono is here in the aftermath of my tiny kitchen.
There is parsley on the floor. I'm telling you, there is.
Parsley on the floor is not even the worst thing.
There's spaghetti in other parts of the lounge room.
You do what you got to do. Well, Jono, tell me about food writing. How'd you get into that?
Well, yeah, look, I have to admit right now I'm not in the business, but I was very wholeheartedly in the business maybe about 3 years ago. I was writing for a few prominent food, event, cultural publications in Sydney. I did a bit for SBS, which was cool, some of their online food stuff. and yeah, it was a great role. I got to interview some of Sydney and Melbourne's best restaurant owners and chefs, and yeah, and I got to try some really good food as well. Yeah.
Nice. What were some of your highlights, or maybe like the best place you went to, or most unique, or something?
Oh, that's a tough question. I remember when I worked for SBS, I did some writing. My main kind of the thing that I was looking for was Sydney and Melbourne's best like ethnic or best migrant food stories. So people who had migrated to Australia at some point in their life, but brought their food tradition with them. And most of these people started up restaurants. So I tried some really, really interesting food. It's food that you can only find sometimes in one place in Australia. And some of these, I remember I went to a place in the western suburbs of Sydney that was an Afghan restaurant, and this owner cooked his mother's recipes from a very, very particular part of the Afghan capital, Kabul. Like just one small district, almost like a few city street blocks, and it was really good food. And then hearing the story and his stories of growing up with that food and the drinks that he had. But yeah, and then other people who've tried to do fusions, like going down to Melbourne. I did one in Fitzroy, which is great Tamil food, and it was kind of combined with Indian cuisine, kind of mainstream Indian cuisine, but it kept these like street food, ideas or street food experiences you find in, I think it's called Chennai now, but Madras as they call it. Yeah.
So good. This is the Film and Food podcast, and I hate this question myself. But tell me some of your favourite films or TV shows, or yeah.
Look, I am a big international film person. I like a film that makes you think as well, and so obviously everyone's been talking about Parasite and everyone's seen it, but I will say that I saw it very early on and I liked it and I recommended it to lots of people. But I do like French film as well, and I love European film, and there are so many food experiences in these films, so countless films. But I don't know, do you know what? I think my favourite film, the film that has made me the most, switched on, or the most happy, or the most interested, is probably this film. It's like an art house sci-fi film called Primer. Have you ever heard of it?
I have heard of it, but I haven't seen it yet.
It is a very, very complicated film about time travel, and that's all I'll say, because
that's all I've heard is people just being like, I don't get this movie, but it's awesome. That's
all I'm going to say, because I don't understand it still, and I've seen it 3 or 4 times, and I've read all the blogs, and I've read all the explaining, YouTube videos and all that. I've seen them all. Because
people people watch Inception and they're like, tell me what the meaning is. But this is like, Inception's like a kindy movie to Primer. Is that right?
Primer is, look, I recommend seeing it, having a mind blown. In fact, I just want to go home and watch it again after this. I think I will. Try and figure it out.
That's sick. So, this is our film and food review of the 2014 film, Chef. Let's look at the menu. Released in 2014, Chef is written and directed by Jon Favreau, who also stars as the titular chef Casper. Jon Favreau was an up-and-coming indie writer-director in the late 90s and early 2000s before breaking into the mainstream by directing the Iron Man films in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Here he returns to his indie roots with a wholesome, heartfelt and feel-good food movie that is sure to please everyone. The plot is as follows. A head chef quits his restaurant job and buys a food truck in an effort to reclaim his creative promise, while piecing back together his estranged family. The film stars Jon Favreau, Robert Downey Jr., Scarlett Johansson, Dustin Hoffman, John Leguizamo, Bobby Cannavale, MJ Anthony, Sofia Vergara, Oliver Platt, Amy Sedaris, and many more members of the cast. So I had a conversation with Jono about why he chose this movie and his initial thoughts and feelings about this movie. Oh, well, we better just move straight into it. So when we first chatted about getting you on the podcast, I was like, oh, what's one of your favorite film and food movies? And you have mentioned more to me since, but the first one you said was Chef. What's your experience with Chef?
Well, I remember seeing Chef I think it came out 2014, and I remember seeing it just after it came out. I think someone bought it maybe 2015, and we watched it at home. And I remember when I first saw it, I don't know what, maybe I was drinking or something, but I remember thinking there wasn't much of a story arc. And I remember thinking there's not really there's not a conflict, like every movie has, an awkward conflict that is like the middle or the beginning or the middle of the movie, and the rest of the movie just figures itself out, or sometimes not, but then that's the entertainment there. But I remember in my opinion, and I rewatched this, so we could have a more in-depth chat about this. And I remember thinking Chef was just very, it was very wholesome. But I remember thinking that the story arc, or like the conflict in the film, was just not super pronounced. And I remember thinking it was like just a real good feel-good time. It was just. What do you think? Did you get that?
Yeah. So I'd heard about Chef. And to be honest, I think like the movie Chef is a bit of a meme in some places. I don't know why. Maybe I have to explore that. But I'd heard about it, and I know Beth had seen it, and she was like, "It's really good." And yeah, I mean, I thought it was, again, like you said, I feel like it was just a really good, wholesome time.
Really
amazing food, obviously.
Yeah.
We'll talk, and we can talk more about that later. But I think, I mean, Jon Favreau is a director.
That's right.
And he did some indies that I haven't seen, but his first big directing movie was Iron Man.
That's right. And
which was like...
That was huge, yeah.
Is, the first movie in the MCU. Got, like, Robert Downey Jr.'s career back on track. Like, great movie. Probably one of my favorite in the Marvel universe.
Yeah, no, the Iron Mans were good. Yeah. Iron Man 2 was really good too.
I liked Iron Man 2, but I'm pretty sure that he made this movie. The movie is like a metaphor for where he was at in his career.
Jon Favreau. Interesting.
Because he made Iron Man 2 and Iron Man 3, and they were more critically divisive than the first Iron Man.
Interesting.
And so then this movie is like literally him being like, I'm going to the food truck version of making an indie movie from a huge blockbuster for a global conglomerate Disney Marvel Cinematic Universe production line type, production. And this was his way of taking a break. And I mean, pretty good way to take a break. Like, you literally get to make a movie about cooking food.
Exactly. No, I really like that kind of metaphor. It's so true. He's working for this kind of, very mediocre restaurant run by a guy who doesn't really care about what's on the menu. And not to say that the Marvel universe is like that, but, sometimes you do feel like they're kind of being pushed out on the production line.
Well, I reckon, again, I genuinely like the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I'm not a comic book fan at all, but I had friends who were, and so I'd see every movie. But basically, I'm like, there's probably like 5, maybe 10, maybe 5 that are truly good, great films.
Oh, I agree.
And then maybe 10 that are just mediocre to good. And then a few that are just not that great.
Not that good.
That's it's hard to do, to make 25 amazing movies. I mean,
those movies are money machines. They've brought in billions of dollars. And I think what was the last Marvel film he did? I think it was just recent. It wasn't one of the Avengers, was it?
Because the Russo brothers did all the Avengers movies.
Oh, okay.
I don't think he's directed since Chef.
Really?
Cue a moment where Chris Slater puts in whether or not he has directed anything. But
interesting. Yeah.
I think he might have been, because he's a character.
Yeah.
He might have played, but I think he's more related to Iron Man. Like, I don't think he would really show up in an Avengers movie.
Maybe I need to fact check that. Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, wow, tangent aside. So basically, I was like, you know, I respected that he just made this cute little indie movie without too many dramas or troubles and made good food, and it's feel good. And yeah, I felt like it was a very happy movie. But if you if you like analyze it maybe too much, it might start to fall apart.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, you look at, say, I don't want to get down a rabbit hole, but you look at his family, the relationship he has with his family, and from the beginning of the film, it's a little bit patchy with his ex-wife and his son, but the food truck just fixes it all, doesn't it?
It's it's true.
By the end of it, they're all good.
Yeah, we can go there. But yeah, I guess those are our initial thoughts. Our initial thought is it is a well worth your time. I think it's a good weekend movie.
It really is.
If you have a partner or someone that is not, because I love thinking movies too.
Yeah.
And Beth, she's amazing. But she's not always up for thinking movies. Well, not thinking movies, but movies like that. You just want a happy. She just wants a good time. I'm like, that's fair enough.
You just want a movie where you're enjoying yourself.
For me, I don't know. Maybe this says more of me as my emotions, but I find movies help me process emotionally.
Okay.
Thinking movies, I'm like, oh, that's helping me. It's a good way to get past my head as a man to feel emotions. Yeah. Whereas Beth is like, I feel emotions all the time. I don't need them in a movie. So I'm like,
okay,
fair enough.
All right. Nice.
So I like a thinking movie, but I also just recommend this as it's 8:00 on a Saturday and you've just eaten. Make sure you do eat before you watch this.
Oh yeah.
And then
otherwise
just watch
you have to make the Cubano,
and
we've been there.
Now that we've set the scene and looked at the menu, we're going to move on to our next segment. It's time to dine. But before we do that, I have to warn you, we're about to go into spoiler territory. Everything we talk about now will be full of spoilers. We're revealing the full plot of the movie. Nothing is off limits. So if you haven't watched Chef, go and do it. It is a great, feel-good, wholesome movie that you will enjoy, and I can basically recommend to everyone. So go and watch Chef, or if you've watched Chef before, you're happy to be spoiled, then beware, we're going to go into spoilers in the next section of the movie. And without further ado, let's go into the review part of this episode. It's time to dine. So, hello, welcome to the review, full of spoilers and ready to go. We had a great conversation talking about the 2014 Chef. It is the first time that I have seen this movie, and it is just a really, really great, excellent film and food movie that is just a beacon of light. It's everything that we celebrate in this podcast. So, sit back and relax. Jono and I are going to talk about our highlights, our favourite film moments from this movie. Yep. All right. Well, is there anything about the film side? We can talk more in depth about food, and we can get into themes however they come up. But anything about the film as it's in itself that stuck out to you?
It was a very colourful film, and I liked the road trip they did, and so there were all sorts of little anecdotes and interesting situations that this guy gets himself into. He goes to New Orleans. He goes all around Florida. He was in Georgia at one point.
Yeah, where does he go for that? The ribs.
Oh, that was Texas. So Austin, Texas. So
that's right.
ribs place, I can't remember what it's called, and that doesn't help because that's actually known as one of the best barbecue ribs in the world, or in the States. Therefore, the world, because that is a cuisine specialized in the States.
Nice.
And apparently, the guy, I think he has glasses. he's kind of like average looking guy
The guy who runs it.
who runs the place.
Yeah.
And he was sitting next to them while they were eating the ribs, watching them eat. I don't know if you remember that scene. He really runs it.
Oh,
That's him.
that's cool.
That's him. He was in the movie, and also his business partner was the guy in the shop who's like, yeah, he's out the back. He's out the back.
That's pretty cool.
That is a cool cameo.
Yeah, I do feel like we'll talk more about the actors later, but I reckon like how cool is it he can just call up all these great places and be like,
I'm coming round.
Yeah, let's
yeah.
film.
Yeah.
No, I do like. I think it is a very colourful. Very colourful. I mean, and the soundtrack. That was one of the things Beth was like. I downloaded this soundtrack when I first watched it, and I used to play it while I worked. And
it's
like,
very true.
It doesn't have as far as I'm aware, it doesn't have a score, like a musical score.
No, you can download all these songs from Spotify. Yeah,
it goes along. So that I think that helps because you're going like all these different parts of the road trip have different songs. I feel like they all really like kind of hit the theme or the
there was a definite
mood of the moment.
Spanish theme in there. I don't know if you noticed, like a Latin,
Cuban kind of
colourful guitars
vibe.
and
That's right.
Yeah, that was good. But it was definitely a very vibrant film. So the music, the colours, the kind of the language that was used as well. It was all very informal and very non-serious.
It was pretty like back and forth, like quick sort of screenplay.
I would almost say that a lot of it was improvised because a lot of them looked like they were real reactions.
Yeah.
Especially from Favreau. Favreau, his unpronounceable last name. He sometimes acted quite awkwardly, which led me to believe that he's either an incredible actor or he was being himself in the film.
Well, because I looked him up on IMDb. He has like 40 acting credits and like 12 writing and like 10 directing. So, and I mean, he acted in the Iron Man movies as like one of the personal assistants or something. Pretty sure he's in them as a character.
There you go, yeah.
Anyway, but yeah, I thought like he was good. Like I think at the beginning, like he's like trying to be really like not prideful, but trying to be a butt, like trying to be
he's really trying
arrogant and trying to be like, I don't care about anyone. I don't really listen. Like, obviously he's pretty stubborn guy at the beginning. Like he thinks he's still great. He's trying to run his restaurant. Like doesn't really listen to his wife. Doesn't really listen to his kid.
Well, he thinks he knows best. Like he's hailed as one of the best chefs of his time. And in the city, and everyone knows who he is. He's a bit of a celebrity, and he's kind of butting heads with this with his boss. He's the manager of the
Dustin
restaurant. Dustin Hoffman.
The Hoffman.
Rain Man, right?
Rain Man. He's pretty I thought like I wasn't that I mean, he's got like 5 lines in the movie.
It was a pretty average role,
but it was
definitely.
It didn't really feel like he tried that hard, to be honest.
Maybe it was a last minute ring in. It's like, Dustin, we need someone to be a restaurant manager. Can you do 5 lines?
I mean, but I don't judge any Hollywood actor that goes into a movie for the money. I'm like, they're gonna earn money.
But it was a fun movie to be part of. It's like we've got Scarlett Johansson,
and he gets to yell at Jon Favreau the whole time. So that's pretty good.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure he would have loved that.
And speaking of yelling,
the Twitter scene, the critic scene.
Yeah.
I mean, look, always double check what you post on Twitter. I'm not a Twitter user myself, but I do use social media and Instagram and Facebook, and I always double check things before I post them.
I do think I did think today, did they get like a Twitter money from this movie?
It looked like some very obvious product placement.
When he's so I think there's a scene where Jon Favreau makes this amazing toasted sandwich for his son, and then the son says, "Hey, Dad, are you on Twitter?" And then they talk about it and they get him set up and whatever. It's like a 5-minute scene, and it ends with like him the son literally describing to his dad how to create a Twitter account. And I was like,
yeah. I felt like I was taken through that personally.
I know, and then
I felt like I was creating a Twitter account.
And through the road trip, he's taking photos and putting it on Twitter, and I was like, man,
Good marketing.
I do have Twitter. It's mostly to stay in touch with movie news from America and to distribute my podcast. And you know what? I have to admit that social media, like if you get sucked in enough, like there is a temptation to just spew your views and opinions, and like, you know, if someone says something really stupid or like really angry or mean, or you just feel like flinging out a tweet, but you just got to tell yourself, no, give yourself 5 minutes. Wait till the anger subsides, and then you go, did I really need to send that?
Did I need to send that? Yeah, just wait a few minutes. I totally get that, but he was a bit late to the Twitter party, it seems, and had no real clue what it was about, and that's fine. He's an older guy, wasn't looking for social media.
Was he a boomer?
Possibly, but would we have called him a boomer back in 2014?
Probably not. Actually,
maybe not. But it's 2020, 6 years later. But no, so I just want to say, as someone who has done some restaurant critiquing before.
Yes, I actually wanted to get your opinion on this. So
yeah, I wasn't like, now remind me of what's the critic's name again? He had a very odd name.
I can't remember.
Yeah, I thought the actor was really good.
I will look it up.
I've done restaurant critiquing a few times, and I've given like star ratings, so ratings out of 5 stars. And I don't think I've ever given a restaurant 5 stars, because I almost feel like that's a massive statement. You're saying this restaurant is perfect, and I have my name on that. And if I send my friends there and they have a bad time, but I say it's 5 stars, or if anyone reads that, then I'm letting them down. So I could give them a glowing review and give them 4 stars, and then all is fine,
Right, and if you give someone 4 stars and it's a glowing review, and so someone goes along and they're almost expecting the ultimate human not weakness, but like the flaws that just happen every single night, like, the mistakes that any restaurant will make, like maybe they're slightly slow or busy with their service, or like a dish isn't just right. Like they still have a good time, but they haven't expected perfection, and so they're like still happy.
Yeah,
Is
exactly.
that sort of?
Well, yeah. I mean, restaurants. It's hard to know when a restaurant's going to be busy or not. Some nights are over busy. Some nights are very quiet. So that's an example. I mean, like, every night is different in a restaurant. You can more or less predict what it's going to be like. But if I go in as a critic on a really quiet night and everything's immaculate, and they know that I'm going to be there, and they give me the best service possible, I could give them 5 stars. But then if I look around, if I go walk by another day and I can see they're understaffed, or they're, maybe it's quiet and all the staff are chatting in the back, like it's, then you can see what the restaurant is really like. And now, but that's not to say that restaurants are inherently bad, like some restaurants are just amazing, and some restaurants get those 5-star reviews because they just make one thing really well, like say the Cubano sandwiches.
Right.
Like there are places around Sydney that do sort of signature meals or desserts, and people come from far and wide just to see that one dessert. And they're the places that get the 5-star reviews.
Right.
So it's different from restaurant to restaurant. Yeah.
Would you ever give a 5-star review?
Well, I think if my mind was truly blown, I think I would probably give a 5-star review. If I was happy to recommend it to anyone anyone had walked past in the street, or any of my friends and family, I would give them a 5-star review and say, this is the best restaurant I've been to.
Wow.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. So then, I thought Jon Favreau's explosion, where he says, I'm not needy and I'm not cloying, and says, this cake is molten about the lava cake, and goes on this huge tirade. Thought he was good there, but then I'm like, so they sort of like, spoiler alert, they make up in the end. Yeah. And the critic ends up funding, with the money that he gets from his sale of his website, he ends up sponsoring the food truck to be an actual restaurant. What's your read on that? Do you think he was too harsh? Or do you think he was fair enough?
I think he was fair enough. So I think a critic is a journalist, basically. You know, they're writing news about a particular event or place or person, and their job is to, even though it's an opinion, their job is to provide in their own words what the truth is, what they think the truth is about that place.
Right.
So it is an opinion, but that's why they describe so articulately what the food, what they, you know. So, you know, you see the critic come in and he's kind of not satisfied the first time he comes in. You know, he's had sort of the same menu. It sounds like Jon Favreau's character is kind of, you know, retreating a bit. You know, going downhill. He's kind of found a safe spot. You know, and so the critic's job is to call that out. You know, is to keep the chef, one of the best chefs in Miami, I believe, on his feet. You know, like we don't want him to decline. He's got skills. You know,
so like a critic is almost like accountability for chefs,
basically, because
right,
when the critic comes in, you know, that's why they do it secretly, because it's like a mystery shopper. You know, when the critic comes in, they want to get the restaurant in their sort of natural environment, and obviously you can be recognised. Thankfully, I wasn't ever popular enough to be recognised by these places, you know, I can only imagine when some of the biggest critics in Sydney go into a place. You know, everyone's like, "Oh, he's here, like make it really good," you know. So yeah, but it's about keeping the chefs, the top chefs in the city accountable, and the top restaurants accountable. You know, to perform their best.
Yeah, because I mean that is like sort of one of the themes. Like, if this is a bit of a metaphor, like I think Iron Man 2 particularly, and I think 3 were pretty panned like critically. Like I think the second one was sort of mediocre reviews, and then 3 was pretty divisive. Like, and so I think it sounds like Jon Favreau is almost exercising some of his own personal thoughts about being criticized. You know, because he says like all you do is eat and vomit out these words, and you know, I guess the same could be said for like movie reviewers, for example, or like film critics, right? So who, you know, you've got famous ones like obviously there's Roger Ebert, and there's the late Roger Ebert, and a whole bunch of others, and there's a plethora of critics, and it is a massive part of the film industry because your like strategy for a movie release is to make your movie, get it picked up or sold by a studio, and have them release it at a festival, whether that's like an indie at Sundance or at Venice or at Telluride or at TIFF or whatever festival it is, or maybe you skip the festivals and go straight into theaters, or maybe you're on Netflix or whatever it is. But the reviews, when those reviews drop, then
that's make or break.
It is the buzz like for the buzz for movies lives and dies on those reviews. So all the critics that go to those film festivals, you know, maybe all of them are buzzing about this movie. Suddenly, you know, they're releasing a trailer in 2 months' time. This is going global now, and they know that they're going to make money at the box office because the reviews of, you know, for me as a film watcher, like if you're getting a Metacritic score over 80, I'm going to watch your movie, basically. Like pretty much no matter what it is about, like I know for me that's a big sell.
That's good, yeah.
You know,
that means I'll probably have a good time in that movie.
Well, basically, and like, you know, I'll watch other things, but it's you know, you can't watch every movie. You can't go to every restaurant. Like, you're kind of trusting, you know, and you are you told to go and find reviewers who not sort of, you know, do diverse people, so you know that you're going to get different opinions, but you ultimately want to make up your own mind. But what do you think about that whole, well, a critic doesn't really create, they're not putting themselves out there, they're not risking anything by writing stuff down or writing about a movie. You know, these people have had thousands of people working for hours and hours and hours, all in a team to create a piece of art that, you know, could go out to the world and is critically trashed. Or same thing, like this restaurant, you know, Jon Favreau and his team work from, you know, 8 a.m. in the morning till 11 o'clock at night to prepare all the food and go to the markets and cook it all, and then just to be told that he's fat now because he's been eating all the food he doesn't eat.
Yeah.
You know what? Personally, I did think he kind of, I think he crosses the line when he does a fat joke.
I was gonna say.
I'm just saying. Yeah, I'm like that's
personal.
just my opinion. Like you don't bring someone else's looks into it. We're talking about the food here.
The food, yeah.
Anyway, but what do you think?
Well, look, yeah. The personal remarks, that's sort of the icing on the cake for the, that's the sort of thing where that would make you feel very bad about yourself. Maybe that's what the critic wanted for Rose's character to feel. Like, all right, something's got to be done. I can't keep living this life of mediocrity. But it's true. I think critics can easily just sit back, write something, post it, and thousands of people will agree or a few will disagree. But in the end, the people who are reading these reviews don't know any better. They may not have been to the restaurant, so they're all basically sheep. And so, so they'll have this opinion of the restaurant as underperforming, or, if that's what the critic's saying, underperforming, or if it's the critic is raving about it, great, that's good. And everyone's going to start lining up. And I think that the critic, even though, it may only take him an hour to write that, an hour in the restaurant, an hour of writing, and that's it. That's kind of, I guess that's just sort of what the job is, And I think, not to defend the critic too much, but that critic has spent his career testing and trying food, and is a good barometer, like a good sort of, is able to judge whether what the sort of the atmosphere of the food scene is at the time, and can say, well, this restaurant's sinking to the ground. If you isolated that restaurant by itself and was not able to compare it to anything, it might be a really good restaurant. But if every single restaurant on the street is performing better than that restaurant, I think you need to, the manager needs to know that, and the people need to know that. Don't waste your time here. But I think a side note, actually, I used to work for a culture magazine called Broadsheet, and it's one of the biggest in Melbourne and Sydney, and it was really fun. But the one cool thing about it was that it had this, a lot of people talk about, so the broadsheet effect. So you'd cover a place in Sydney, a cafe or something, and then the next week there'd just be people lining out the door because they read about it in this trendy paper. Oh, then it must be good, because in broadsheet we didn't actually give star ratings.
Okay.
We actually just announced that it was happening, but the sheer fact that it was in broadsheet meant that it was cool, or like there was something worth visiting. And I remember actually I wrote an article for SBS on a very small dumpling place that opened up in Newtown, which I love and I still go to this day. And very, it's not shiny, it's not sort of a swanky place, but it serves really good food. And I wrote an article about it. It went viral. I think it was posted on the Vice News website. And
cool. That's awesome.
It was seen by about 1 million people. And they couldn't handle, the owner actually was cautious about it because she knew that she may not be able to handle the amount of customers that came in. And that probably was true. And I think actually it was for the better because, they've had continuous streams of customers ever since. This was 3 years ago. They're still doing so well. But, there's a bit of caution there. It's like, are we going to be able to handle this many customers? And I went in a few weeks later to say hi and see how everything was going. And they were just so busy. Like takeaway orders flying out the door. There were lines in the street. People were, like had all these plates on the table. It was packed. Really interesting.
Yeah, that's really cool. So I guess, if no one's going to write about food and like, you're going to write about things all the time. Like it is, I guess, journalism. That's a good point. I didn't think about it that way. And I guess you do as a critic, which is kind of what we're doing on this podcast, which is what we are doing. But I guess you have a responsibility too. Like, because the chef is being held accountable by the critic. And the critics, saying, come on, pick up your game, keep innovating, keep creating the food you want to create. Don't just rest on your laurels, keep trying and trying to do new things and, breaking new ground. Whereas like a critic is like, I guess the audience almost needs to hold them accountable. Who holds a critic accountable?
Well, that's true. I mean, I
themselves?
don't think anyone. Yeah, I don't think anyone. I think, well, I think they're, obviously they work for look, a lot of critics these days work for the newspaper, work for a large media company. And so, if a journalist, if anyone steps out of line, then they might see their job go. But I think in this case, it's obviously a fictional thing, and it's not often that there's a critic who has his own website that people will go to. Possibly, like, they might tweet or Instagram, but it's usually quite level. It's nothing. There are not many critics out there with their own sort of independent company. So this critic in the film, is a bit of an anomaly. It's very fictional. So I think
right, it would be very rare. Like, you'd have to be a very high profile chef / a restaurant to get a critic with 140,000 Twitter followers.
Yeah, definitely, especially in 2014.
Yeah,
but I think the people who are following him are what's keeping him accountable in some way, but can work both ways. Like, he could post up some sort of edgy material and get more followers, and maybe that's what he was trying to do. In this fictional world. Do
you have to love what you're doing to be a critic? I think so. Like, if you don't like right, if you're a food critic or a film critic, and you don't love films or you don't love food, to me, I'm like, I don't know. I feel like you have to be pretty honest and earnest. Like, it's hard to do, but if you just like Chef Casper, he had lost his sort of love. He'd lost his love for just his pure joy of cooking. I guess if you lose your joy for movies and you're just looking at things like, the movie I think about, this is the first movie we ever did on this podcast, which is Ratatouille. Oh, yeah. It's Anton Ego, the villain, Anton Ego.
Yeah.
He thinks he's the final word. He thinks he knows everything. He's not easily impressed. Like, that's his natural attitude. Yeah. And it takes this dish from his childhood to bring him back.
Oh, what? That's one of my favourite food moments in a film.
It's amazing.
He's a very great stereotype of a critic.
He is. I do think that movie has a really nice balance of like redeeming him at the end with his nice little review that he writes, which is, saying a critic risks something when he finds something new, which I think it's what I really like about your articles. It's like you're trying to find the, because like for me, I watch more movies than probably 80% of the population. Like,
I've heard this. Yeah.
Well, like, I think the stats are like, a good large majority of the population watches like 5 movies a year at the theatre. Like, it's not many.
No, it's not many.
Whereas
at all.
I average, I probably average 30 to 40
at the theatre.
Not at the theatre, but
just
like from a film year. Like, I do go pretty hard, especially around award season. But and I have like even my family, they'll just be like, I've never heard of that movie, and I'm gonna go watch it now because of your thing. I'm like, to me, that's, if I can share something with someone, that's a cool thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think it's true. I think critics are people who have had experience in the food industry and they know what they're talking about, and because they've decided to go down that path, it probably means that they're quite passionate about it, even if they might seem a little stuck up or snobby. They are passionate about what they do. Now, I think the snobbiness is a bit of a Hollywood, trope.
A trope.
Yeah, okay. I think the people that I've worked with, and particularly me as well. Look, I was doing this as a uni student, believe it or not, but I'd had almost a decade in the food industry, and so for me, like, there was that knowledge, but there was also just like a passion for food, I think, and I just loved. I'm not a snobby person, I don't think, and because of that, I went in and just was pretty excited to try some food and like talk to the people who made it. And I think that's what most critics are like.
Yeah, that is true. I think there's yep.
Yeah.
I don't think I have anything else to add to that. Yeah, like the performances are fine, I guess. I don't know if I liked. I think the child in the movie.
He was a good actor.
Let me get his name up because we deserve to name him.
Yeah.
So
I think he actually started his career with this one, or this is one of his largest
his name
films.
is MJ Anthony, and
yeah.
he plays Percy, Jon Favreau, Chef Casper's son. I thought he was really like, I think a lot of child performances, you know, it's hard. Like, I mean, it's hard to direct a child, obviously.
Yeah.
I mean, there are some really, really, really good child performances.
I mean, like the 90s, had so many.
And there's some recently, like Brooklyn Prince in The Florida Project was amazing.
Oh, I haven't seen that one.
That's a good movie.
Okay.
And Jacob Tremblay in Room, amazing.
Oh, yeah, okay, yeah.
Anyway, so I don't know if they're on that level. He's on that level in this movie, but he's not overdoing it. He just seems a pretty chilled out, like.
Yeah.
Like, he just seems like frankly, I work with kids. Like, I see a lot of kids. He just seems like a pretty chilled out, like what a 12-year-old boy would be. He'd be on his phone, on YouTube, on Twitter, but like, he has a cool relationship with his dad. Like, I think he just wants to hang out with his dad. It's nice to see him sort of progress and learn the ropes. And I don't think sometimes child performances fall into like melodrama and a bit too much. I never feel like it's over the top. I think it's just right. I think he's probably my favourite. I mean, you have all of your Avengers. You have Scarlet. You have Robert Downey Jr., who is great. He's really funny.
He was quite funny in that film.
He's funny.
Yeah. He was just sort of very strange, overconfident.
Yeah, I think he's basically just playing a fictionalized version of himself. And yeah, I mean, it's colourful. I don't know, I mean, this is nitpicking now, but I don't know if the cinematography really did much for me. Like, it was fine. It's serviceable. It just keeps the movie going. And look, I didn't really expect anything too amazing. I don't know if Jon Favreau, like, if blocking and composition is really his strength. Like, because a lot of the times it's, we've got a character on the phone. Let's have him on the phone, and then a shot of Jon Favreau talking on his phone, and then a shot back, and then it's hard on a phone. It's hard, but there's a couple of dialogue scenes where you sometimes you might have them in the same shot or an over the shoulder shot, but it's just like one person talking. Now back to this person talking.
It was very simple.
It's simple. It was fine. I think the pacing's good. It's like nearly 2 hours. I don't feel like it drags. I feel like if you
are engaged,
if you're expecting like a major plot twist or any sort of drama in the last hour, you might think that's going too long. But if you're like, you just got to go into the road. When it hits the road trip, you're basically like, it's just good times from here. Like, you just got to enjoy it. I feel like
it's a feel good film, and I feel like there's nothing too shocking or there's no plot twist really. No. So you're there. I think we said before, you're there for a good time. It's a very easy movie to watch.
Yeah, it goes down well. Yeah, and it's funny. Like, you have like Sofia Vergara, who is Jon Favreau's ex-wife.
Yeah, and she's quite funny. Just anything she does,
she is funny, and I do think she's good. Like, I feel like that dynamic sort of surprised me because she seems very supportive of Jon Favreau's character. And I think maybe almost Chef Casper himself is the one, from my understanding, you don't really explain it, but it sounds like he is the one who probably was the instigator of that breakup. Because obviously Sofia Vergara is responsible for introducing him to her ex-husband to get everything going. And then they married at the end. Because they're on the road trip, and then he comes home, and then he finds out that he has the chef, and it's like, final scene, great, they're married, and you're like, okay, I sort of saw it coming, but we forgot about her for an hour. Anyway.
That is funny. I think as another Hollywood trope for having like an ex-partner is that they're very unpalatable characters. They're very dodgy or rude or horrible people, but I think there's really nothing. Their relationship, even though they're not married, is very amicable.
Oh, I do think so. It is rare. I feel like
it doesn't happen much.
Because I'm like, even like the things around like custody of their kid, right? I feel like even there is the scene where like she's like, you're an hour late. Like, say sorry. Like, there's some moments where he's still a terrible dad. but I feel like it doesn't really blow up into any crazy over the top sort of shenanigan fight that might be a bit cliched. I don't know. I thought it was pretty fine.
What about the supporting chefs?
Oh, I love them.
Yeah, and okay, I will say, so I have spent some time working in hospitality, and the sort of stress of working in a kitchen is depicted quite well, I thought, in the sort of the early scenes of the movie when they're in the restaurant, and where it's just everything's flying everywhere. And I remember where Chef Caspar leaves in a huff, you know.
That's right.
And then you just see the dockets flying out of the machine. I was getting sort of war flash, because that has happened to me before,
so
working in bars and in kitchens, and this is real stuff. You know, it is stressful working in a kitchen. I do think it does look, you know, it's not oversold. Like, you have the nice little opening scene, which is a cool little montage of him cooking, but even still, he looks stressed. Yeah,
like he looks like
sweaty,
he's he's trying to drink water and like chop really fast, and you're like, he knows what he's doing, but you know, it would be hard. Like, I've thought about I'm like, imagine being a chef, and I think about it and like, it's tough, man. Like, you think other people have bad hours, but imagine finishing when everybody is cleaned up at 11 o'clock at night and going to bed and literally waking up and it's not like you've got hours in lieu now. Like, you're back up there at 9 a.m. to get everything prepped and go to the market. Like, but I do think like the boy band with like Bobby Cannavale and John Leguizamo were great.
I loved his character.
There's
great support. Yeah.
Good banter. Like, they all really like support him, which is nice.
Yeah.
And I mean, John Leguizamo's like follows him and goes with the food truck. And so I think they play off nice. I do think, honestly, probably the worst. Like, why is Scarlett Johansson in this movie?
That was for me, it felt like a cameo, but she appeared a little bit too much for it to be a cameo, right? And I think it's true, you know, it was, and one thing you notice is that in the movie, there's not many women. There's now you have to remind me, what is the ex-wife's name?
Sofia Vergara.
But what's her character name?
Oh,
that doesn't really come up.
No, it's
so
Inez.
So Sofia Vergara and Scarlett Johansson are basically the only two women that appear in the movie. So in a way, it's kind of interesting that, you know, Scarlett's there. It's almost like, you know, just kind of adding a little bit more women in the movie, but is she really adding that much value?
Well, I mean,
she was the host,
okay.
You know, like the restaurant host.
I did think this, and look, Jon Favreau is probably really good friends with Scarlett Johansson.
Probably, yeah.
But look, we have to call a spade a spade. Yeah. Sofia Vergara and Scarlett Johansson are Hollywood A-list actors, and they're pretty attractive women. That's what we'll say. Yeah. And for John to write this screenplay where his ex-wife is Sofia Vergara and his current girlfriend is Scarlett Johansson.
He's got some explaining to do.
That's pretty. I mean, anyway, that is. Yeah. I found that funny, and I do think what is she there for? Like, I guess she's the one. Like, she's there and she works at the restaurant, and I guess it is the symbolic where she's just basically like, I know what's up. Like, you're hiding all of this. Like, we're not really meant to be together. I don't know. It didn't really do too much for me, but. Yeah,
it was a bit and then she kind of wasn't mentioned any.
Yeah, she does disappear.
Yeah, she disappears.
She 100% she's like, cool, you should, you know, deal with your problems, and he's like, cool, okay, bye. Yeah. And then she never comes back.
Yeah.
Anyway. And finally, we get to talking about our favorite food moments, and boy oh boy is this movie full of great food. So enjoy the mouth-watering discussion of the great food in this movie. Let's move on. Favorite, and this, you know, this should be easy, but favorite food moments.
Favorite food moments. Okay. Well, I will say the scene with Scarlett Johansson and the home cooking You know, the kind of the seductive twirling of the fork around the spaghetti. That was definitely a film highlight.
That was a good
You're just
scene.
like, what is going on here? Like,
yeah.
And then you sort of like, wait, this guy's a chef. He cooks all day long, and he's going home and he's cooking more. Like, that doesn't make sense.
That is funny. Like there are two scenes at the beginning of the movie when he first gets the review and he cooks for Scarlett, and then when he does his huge when he gets into the fight with Dustin Hoffman again and like leaves the restaurant, when the critic is there for the second time and he goes and makes more food. It is crazy. You do think like, you know, both times you're like, man, does this guy have a huge, like his apartment didn't look that big. Like, does this guy have like octopus or squid in his fridge, or is he like, how's he ducked to the markets? I don't like. Anyway,
it's true,
not that I'm mad. Like, the food scenes are amazing. I'm not like, it is nitpicking, but I was like, how does that timeline work?
Yeah.
But he goes home and just makes like 8 dishes, and you're like, okay, cool.
Yeah. Look, that is no easy task. You know, this guy's
as you've seen firsthand with me trying to make 4 dishes, and my kitchen is a bong.
There is still food out there and lots of jars. It would have taken him hours to do all that in reality, and you know, he's dedicated to his job. Obviously, like he wants to make this sort of new and improved menu, which I thought looked really nice, really cool. But Dustin Hoffman didn't like it.
No.
So, but I actually really liked the reaction of the critic when he gets presented the chocolate lava cake for like the second time, and he's just looking around like, does anyone see this?
That's so good. No, and he like takes a photo of it.
Yeah,
that's funny. No, I think like this movie, we've watched so many movies on the podcast already, and this may be the best food, just photographed food I've seen. It's so good. All of those scenes are great. What am I trying to think of? The donuts. Oh, what are they called?
Oh, were they from the market?
No, they're from New Orleans. What are they called?
Oh, good question. But I know what you mean. People travel across the continent for that. I've personally never been to New Orleans. I've seen a lot of the States, but I really regret not going down to Louisiana.
They're called beignets or beignets.
Oh, wait,
am I pronouncing that right? Beignets? I think he says beignets.
Beignet.
They look so good. Word. Like there's because he puts them in the fryer and takes them up and
right, sort of deep fried.
His son finally gets to go to New Orleans. Those looked amazing.
Yeah, no, that did look good. I think you've got to admit that the Cubans, you know, when they're first sort of dishing them out and putting them in the bag, like they just look so good, you know, slathering the butter on it. And,
when they first make the sandwiches.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah.
The montages are so good. Like you don't often like. I think we've discussed this on the podcast already, but like to shoot a movie with real food is an expensive thing to do because of food standards and stuff. Like I'm pretty sure I don't know. Maybe I have to interview someone about this, but maybe like you probably throw out a whole bunch of that food, like you're creating it, but you're not serving it at a restaurant. You're not eating it per se. Like it's a big production, so you don't often get like proper montages from A to B of like the full process. Like you may get the dish on the table.
I think, and I actually really like that. Is captivating. You know, watching them, and when he's explaining to his son how to make it. That's like
that's a good scene.
Captured that in my brain after just watching it, you know, on Wednesday, like a few days ago. That I've captured that in my brain. I could probably make one for you right now.
Yeah, yeah. It's true, and I do like you know, we obviously like Carl Casper's not a great father to his son, and rectifies that when he brings him on the road trip. And it is nice to like see him kind of work in his element, like in his good. Passing on like the skills to his son, like when his son's just like, oh, I burnt it, let's just serve it, and he just goes on this little pulls him aside and he's like, look, I'm not a great dad and I'm not a great husband, but I'm a really good cook and we don't do that. And he's like,
that was a good
like, you know, the excellence in everything you do is like what makes a good chef.
No, I really like that. Like, there's some good sort of father-son moments in that movie, I think. And the sort of the buddy scenes where the where John Leguizamo's character is, they're just kind of bantering a little bit, and they sort of give him his first beer.
Yeah, that's good. I like that. That was funny.
Great moment.
Man, they do have they have good chemistry, those two.
Yeah.
You genuinely believe like they probably are good friends, but it's hard to get like a good chemistry.
I think, and it's true in kitchens. It is a bit like being at war. And you're doing, when you're with someone in such a stressful situation, you get to know them on a very personal level, and so they're in kitchens, cooks and chefs are very close, and like they're very broy. They're buddies. Often there's there's always someone you really hate or you just really can't work with, but often you just develop this sort of bond, this kinship.
Yeah. No, that's good. I'm just trying to rack my brain. There's just so much good stuff. Obviously, there's the things that we cook tonight, which we'll talk about in just a second, but there's the Cubano sandwiches. They're so yummy. There's those 2 cooking montages where he's making squid, he's making the pasta, he's making the berry dessert. I'm trying to think of what else there is.
Well,
surely there's more. There's the ribs. We talked about the ribs.
Oh, the ribs. That's right. And it's just each time they pulled up to a new place, I think they used some of the ribs, the smoky ribs, in the Austin version of their.
That's right. Yeah, they make an Austin version of the sandwich with the ribs.
But I think
do remember
that about covers it. I think it covers it quite well, because there were a lot of food. It's a food movie.
It is a food. It is genuinely a food movie, and the food is, does sort of play a role in the movie. He. Obviously Beth and I discovered that there was a chef, quite a good chef, that was hired to, and we'll link it in the show notes, but he was hired to create all the menus. He was basically given creative freedom by Jon Favreau to just go nuts and make a menu that's going to fit the movie.
That's so cool.
And so he just made this sort of kind of cliched, maybe a touch too overindulgent, overdone menu for the first part when he's in his creative rut, and then he's made these fun, fresh, vibrant dishes for as he kind of finds his creative flow again. And that's a really fun thing to do. But
absolutely,
and so it does. You do see him sort of emerge from his little quagmire, when he goes home and cooks for himself again on his own time, because that's what Dustin Hoffman says: be creative in your own time. He goes home and he stays at the restaurant and he creates and kicks himself out of the rut. And don't be hungry when you watch this movie. Or if you are hungry, make sure you have food.
Make sure you have something in the fridge.
Seriously, it's you watch it and you basically it can.
It makes you want to go to a restaurant and order
really,
a nice.
It really
meal.
does.
Yeah. A good seafood pasta or something.
Yeah. So then, as you've probably already guessed, we have. Look, in a film and food review, I normally only give you one recipe because that's a normal thing to do. But I went a bit all out. So, based off the actual chef who made these dishes has released his recipes online.
Do you remember what his name was?
I will look it up.
Yeah,
okay, so the chef's name is Roy Choi. And he has, on this website called Bake Space, he has basically all the recipes from the movie there. So we have, and I've adapted them to sort of be our own flavour, but they're not too different. But we'll link that, and we'll link the recipes to our own lava cake, our own pasta dish, our own berries and cream dish, and our own Cubano sandwich recipes, which were all super delicious and super yummy.
Yeah.
Again, you find that in the show notes of this week's episode, on social media, on our website. Can't miss it. Let us know how you went. Cook it. Make it. It is perfect for a dinner party. So if you're going to impress a bunch of guests, then make all 4 dishes. If you're not going to do that, well then don't go crazy because it's really hard to make all 4 dishes.
Definitely, I'd say
Yeah.
it's dinner party food right there.
The pasta, yeah. So I would say like pick one of them at a time. It's probably a smart way to do it. But yeah, get cooking. You can always email to us or share with us on social media. Would love to see how you go. Now, we've talked about the recipes, but what did Jono and I think of my 4 recipes I created for the movie chef? Well, here is a compilation of our reactions and thoughts about all the dishes that we made from this movie. Moments that you record. Okay. All right, so I'm going to try and flip this lava cake.
Oh, yeah, it's looking very... Okay. It's definitely, a bit of liquid inside there. All right. Very hot.
I'll put the berries on first. That was stupid.
No, that's fine. We've got the berries here.
I kind of want to bring the plate.
Okay. Here we go. The hot thing is on the plate. Oh, look. Oh, there you go.
I've lost half of it.
Close enough.
No!
Close enough.
I'll have the bad one. You have the good one.
Okay, all right. I mean, see how the second one turns out. Maybe you just have to leave it for a little bit. Because that is a good inside. No, that is a good inside.
All right, well, that's my one. Let me have that one. And then
all right,
maybe, should we wait for the second? It kind of worked.
Kind of worked.
So close. Let's leave it. That's a
good.
fine enough photo.
I know, that's
Look,
good. That's good.
I'm not a restaurateur. It's a good
It's
go.
good. It's good, yeah. Do we want the cream on this one?
Well, it tastes good, but it's fair to say, just like in the movie, the presentation's really important. So if I serve this up to the food critic, what would he be doing?
I think he'd be happy that there is a liquid interior and it's not hard. But
if it looked like it did, though.
If it looked like it did. Yeah. I don't know.
You're very kind. It's why you just got to try. Not every time will be a...
But when you work in a restaurant, you got to do it right every time. You know, when you're a chef.
It's true, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You got to make it perfect on TV. So we've got a Cubano. Got a Cubano in my hand right now. Half of a half. It's got the carved barbecue pork, was it? Yeah. And it's delicious. It's kind of like the carvings of a Christmas ham. Nice and chunky. It's got a slice of Swiss cheese. The pickled dill right here. And mustard on both sides. And it looks like he slathered butter on both sides, like in the film. So I think this is pretty genuine. Taste is good because you've got like the veggie, like the kind of the tanginess of the dill. You've got the nice barbecue flavor of the pork with the cheese. Like cheese is just good with anything like this, any sandwich. But then the mustard is like a bit spicy, but it's not like chili spice. It's that kind of warm mustard spice. So it's pretty good. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it was obviously cooked a while ago, so that's fine. You know, it's quite crunchy, but does not disappoint. Pasta, I was very surprised by. It's nice and simple. We've got what's the tube like spaghetti called?
I think it is literally called tubular spaghetti. Now, the first thing I noticed is that it's very simple and like a bit oily. That it's just all it is oil, lemon drizzled on the top, lots of parsley, grated Parmesan cheese, and there's something else in here. What is this? Garlic? Chunks of garlic. And there are so many different flavors. It's such a warm flavor. Very soul food. It's very good. I was really keen for this berry dessert. I think definitely I don't know what I did, but maybe if I freeze the caramel next time, I just left it out to cool, but when I crushed it, it stuck all together. So, but it's still yum, just probably more crunchy than his one. The berries are yum, cream's yum. But apart from that, unless there's anything else from the movie you want to unpack, I feel like we pretty comprehensively covered it.
Yeah, no, I think we've covered the main themes and the food. So
yeah. So we've talked about our highlights. We've talked about our favorite film moments, our favorite food moment, the themes, the messages. We've dissected this movie to death and had a great conversation. We're going to wrap things up in a bow and we're going to give our compliments to the chef.
Yeah.
All right. Well, talking about ratings, I'm going to ask you to do some ratings.
Okay.
So, this is like a film and food review, and we give a film rating and like a food rating. So both of us.
Okay.
So it kind of adds up to 40. So the film rating is like it's very hard to separate in this instance, but like the quality of the film, like its techniques and the acting and the screenplay and all the things that make it a film, and then the rating of the food. So like quality, quantity, how it contributes to the movie as a whole, out of 10. Do you want me to go first?
Okay, you go first.
Then I can give you some time to think.
Great.
Okay, so Chef. I think as a film, I'm going to give it a 7.
Okay.
7 out of 10. I'm like, it's not going to blow anyone away with its themes. It's not necessarily original, but it is well competently made. It has a great soundtrack. It has really good pacing. It's really enjoyable, really wholesome, and there is definitely much need for those type of movies in today's world. It's not very often you get just a very good, wholesome, feel-good movie that's done well. So yeah, 7. I feel like I may be giving it too much there, but I'm going to stick with a 7 in the spirit of being a good critic. I'll give it a 7. I think 7's fair. And then for the food,
so we had 4 dishes there.
Yeah, well, for the food in the movie, So the food in the movie, look, I've only given 1 10 before, and that was for Ratatouille. And the only movie that got a 10 was also Ratatouille. That was the only perfect reviewed movie we had, which I feel like it deserves it. It is a great movie. I am going to give it a 10. Okay. I'm going to give it a 10.
You have to.
I don't know how it loses any marks, to be honest. The food, there's so much of it. It's so well realized on screen. It's colorful. You want to eat it. Shows you the process of making it. Relates to the story. It's literally called Chef. So that gives me like 17 out of 20. So as a film and food movie, like honestly, you can't go wrong. Definite recommend from me.
Awesome.
Jono, you.
Well, look, as a movie, I did express my, weren't really gripes, but they were my my opinion on the fact that there was sort of lacking in any sort of plot twist or significant story arc, even though you can find it in this movie. I would say I would go for I was tossing up whether to go for a 6.5, which is probably the harshest. That's the lowest I'd go.
Okay.
However, because it doesn't take itself too seriously, because it's not trying to be anything bigger than what it is. It's almost just like, it's just a really great sort of pet project that someone had that turned out really well. I feel. No, I'm gonna elevate my score to 7.5.
Oh wow!
I'm gonna give it a whole point more.
Nice.
Now I do feel like there were some things that could be improved with maybe the cast.
No, I agree.
Some of the acting, but all in all, like I had a good time watching it. I knew exactly what I was going to get. It was Chef. It was a chef.
Yeah.
You can't argue with that.
It's true.
So I'm going to go for the 7.5.
Nice.
Now the food. Look, I mainly agree with you. I think on the 10.
Okay.
Now it's It
It's a
seems
10.
like look, it is probably a 10. I could say maybe like a 9.5 because I would like to see more food in the film. But honestly, I think there was enough food in the film.
Yeah, I see.
I liked it.
I see what you mean, but I feel like for me personally, I have to give it a 10. All right, so if we
I'm going to call it a 10.
okay, nice. So if we add those all together using my math brain, that's 2 10s is 20, and 2 7s is 14, and a 0.5, so that gives us 34.5.
That was
Wait,
yeah, no, true.
34,
2 sevens.
34.5 out of 40.
That's not bad.
That's a really good, really, really, really good film and food movie.
Nice.
High recommend. I don't really know if there's too much more to say.
Look, if you like films and food, this might be the movie for you.
Yeah. Well, Jono, thanks for coming on the podcast.
It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, it's so fun. I really enjoyed it, and you're welcome back anytime.
Oh, fantastic.
We have to have you back, and yeah. Do you have any final words of wisdom to leave us with?
I don't know. I mean, like this film taught us a lot about food. I think, it's inspired me to go and try some more food. It's made me hungry. So I go and try some more food, go try different
Amen.
food, different types of food,
Amen.
and cook it at home. Like Chris is so kindly and adeptly demonstrated in his own kitchen.
Yeah. There is a joy of cooking at home. I do feel like it's funny. I'm pretty sure like every single movie that we've watched on this podcast that's related to food talks about criticism in some way. It's
okay.
all like snobbery or like pretentiousness, like, around food. And so, yeah, don't be a snob. Don't be arrogant. Like, I feel like if you just be a lifelong learner, just adopt the principle of being, I'm going to keep learning, keep creating, keep having fun, keep enjoying. You can always spice up your food life, I feel like, is what I keep learning. Like, it's not realistic to do it every night. You're not a restaurant. Like, that's fine.
Yeah.
You're going to have to do what you're going to do. But find those little days or Saturdays or times when you're going to, like, make something new. That's what I did for, like, a year when I first moved up to this area. I was living in a share house, and it was one night a week that I cooked dinner, and I just made my way through a cookbook. And I learnt heaps by doing that.
Well, you learn by practicing,
Yeah.
by trying new things. Yeah.
And it was a good way to do it. And so, yeah, whatever it is, maybe it's not food, but maybe your career or the passions you enjoy doing, keep doing them. Don't tear other people down unnecessarily. But if you're a critic, I guess you can do that.
But if that's your job, then keep doing that.
Yeah, keep other people accountable. Yeah. No. Chef is a feel-good, wholesome movie that will leave you smiling and your tummy rumbling as the credits roll. So a total of 34.5 out of 40 for this movie means it's a certified excellent film and food movie, and one that we can just highly recommend for you to pop in and watch basically at any time. Well, that about does it for this week's episode, a film and food review of the 2014 film Chef. We still have so much great content lined up for you in the coming episodes. I want to say thank you again to Jono for coming on this episode and sharing his vast knowledge and wisdom and giving us so many great stories and just being a wonderful co-host on this week's episode, and we'll be sure to have him back on this episode. So if you want to know more about Jono, if you want to read some of the things that he mentioned in some of his writings for SBS and get in touch with him and follow what he's doing, well, I'm going to link his SBS articles, link his Instagram, so that you can read up on him and hear and read all the great work that he's been doing on the internet. So they're going to all be in the show notes and on social media, so make sure you follow him. We're definitely going to have him back on the podcast, so thank you again, Jono. If you want to support this podcast, why don't you have coffee with us? We are on a website called Coffee where you can donate the price of a coffee to our podcast to support us. This is a website that supports artists by allowing people to donate the price of a coffee to support their work. And this is a podcast that is completely free and always will be for you to listen to. So do not feel pressured at all. But if you are willing to part with the price of a coffee to help us keep on running, to help us pay for equipment, our subscriptions to all the different things we need to keep this episode going, ingredients for recipes, all that kind of thing, feel free to shout us a coffee, and you can find all the details on how to do that in this week's show notes or on our website or social media pages. Thank you to everyone who has supported us on there already. If you enjoyed this podcast, can I ask you a favor? Can you leave a 5-star rating and review on your website of choice, or preferably Apple Podcasts? We're a brand new podcast, and your review and rating helps us get into the earbuds of people who want to listen to our podcast. It helps us get the word out there and reach people who need to hear our podcast. So we super appreciate those who have already left reviews and 5-star ratings for us, and thank you for considering to do that. Be sure to subscribe to our podcast wherever you listen. We're on Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, Castbox, iHeartRadio, TuneIn, and SoundCloud. Make sure you email us. The address is fans@filmandfoodpodcast.com. That's fans@filmandfoodpodcast.com. And join us on social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, all at Film and Food Podcast. Let us know what you thought of Chef. What did you think of the recipe? Send us pictures. Let us know how you went. Give us film recommendations. We love getting fan recommendations for our films. So if you want your favorite film and food movie to be on our podcast, well then get in touch with us. You can give us support and feedback. The most important thing is to join the conversation. Until next time, goodbye and thanks for listening.